Hey, it's Vas here from Aussie RC Playground and welcome to another unboxing. Today we're going to be looking at something a little bit different here on the channel, as well as a slightly smaller scale than what we're typically used to. So this is the Losi Tenacity DB Pro, and it's a 1/10 scale, 4-wheel drive, I guess you call it like a desert style buggy. It's a very cool looking car, comes in a couple of different color schemes, and you know, although the Tenacity name has been around now for a little while, Losi have actually thrown all the upgrades at this particular buggy, which of course gives it the Pro name. And there's also a couple of really cool features about it as well. So being that it is a Horizon Hobby and Losi product, it does come with AVC, which stands for Active Vehicle Control, which kind of acts like a gyro, and you can if you have a computerized radio, you can actually tune the steering and throttle input of that gyro separately. But with the included radio, you just have like a little, well, it used to be the dual rate knob on the radio, and that will allow you to turn it up or turn it down depending on how much input you want. And of course, you can turn it off completely if you wish. But one of the other cool things that this car has got is it's got smart technology. So this now comes with a new ESC, which is the firmer 130 amp ESC. And this allows you to get some feedback to the radio, provided of course you have the attachments for the included radio, or you can do what I'm going to be doing, which is to run my DX5C, and hopefully I'll get that telemetry feedback back to my radio. Now, of course, it does work best with the Spectrum batteries, which of course I did get for this particular car, and I will be running this car exclusively with those batteries, and I also have the Spectrum charger to be able to charge up those batteries. So a couple of really cool additions to the channel. I will probably be doing just a different video on the batteries and charger at a later stage once I get a little bit more familiar with it. But for now, let's have a look at this guy. I think I have spoken enough in front of the box. Time to get that out of the way, and let's talk about the car. So as I said, it comes in a couple of different color schemes. There is a Fox color scheme. I got the Lucas oil, and of course now we're going to be talking about the goodies that you get in the box. First thing here is some batteries. Now these don't come in the bag, they actually come attached to the box that the radio comes in. But it's really nice that they actually include some AA's for your radio. You don't usually see that with a lot of ready-to-runs. So, you know, they're not the only ones that do it, but it's pretty cool that they included that. Little tools bag, you got some Allen keys in here, there's a bit of a cross wrench, and there's some plastic pieces in here, which I believe are extenders for your battery tray, so that you can actually put the thicker 3S battery in here. There's also an included pinion and some hardware as well for those additional spaces. And there's an extra little grub screw in there, which I believe might be for that pinion too. So we'll be talking about this pinion a little bit later on, because there's some important information in the manual that I need to share with you regarding that. Now, an interesting thing here is they actually give you a bind plug, but you don't need this bind plug with the included receiver. The receiver that comes with this car actually has a little push button. So if you do need to bind that receiver to a separate radio, just like I did when I had to bind it to my DX5C, you actually don't need the bind plug. But, you know, they include it, keep it as a spare. You never know when you might need it. There is also a sheet with some advertisements, things for some MIP stuff. I don't know, you might like that, I don't know. We'll put that away. And of course the all-important user manual, which I know a lot of people will read to their kids as a bedtime story. I've said this many times before. I know that especially when you are in the hobby for a little while, you become a little bit complacent about user manuals. It's like, I know how to work these cars, I know how to drive, I know how to plug a battery in and turn it on, it's all good. But every car's a little bit different, and this one in particular is quite different because of that ESC. I highly recommend you take the time and just at least read some of the information that's in here regarding the ESC and how it works and the feedback that you can get back to your radio. Now, there is one very important piece of information in here, aside from, like, they've got this one here, which is the ESC settings and what you can actually change on the ESC. Again, this one comes with the LVC set at 3.0 volts. I think I'm going to bump that up to 3.2. But on page 8, this is important, on page 8, there is a tiny little paragraph here that talks about using the car with either a 2S or a 3S. Now, as you saw, there is an included pinion, and unlike the Armour cars, that is not a high-speed pinion. That's actually a smaller pinion designed specifically to work with 3S batteries. And the important information that's on here is regarding using 2 or 3S. So I'll read it out to you and I'll show you up on screen as well. If you are using a 2S LiPo battery, use the included 17-tooth pinion gear. If you are using a 3S LiPo battery, use the optional 15-tooth pinion gear, which is included. Using a 17-tooth gear with a 3S LiPo battery will result in damage to the ESC and motor. Note that they say will result, not might result. So I would be very inclined to be changing out that pinion before you run this car on 3S. I would also encourage Losi to perhaps make that warning just a little bit bigger, maybe bold letters, maybe put it somewhere where people are less likely to miss it, because I actually had to search for that information in the manual and it's only just briefly highlighted. So if this is a major problem, then I would be inclined to sort of making it a little bit more noticeable in the user manual. On the back, of course, you got some exploded views with some part numbers and everything else, so that of course you can order up parts in case you do break something on the car. DX2E is the included radio. These radios are actually really well equipped, but much like the STX2, these feel a little bit cheap in the hand with the plastic wheel and everything else. They do work great though. They don't work on the same protocol as the STX2. These are a DSMR protocol, which is much better, and of course it works with AVC, so you have a little dial here on the front which can control that, and you have provisions up here to be able to attach a little phone holder so that you can use the Bluetooth and get all that information and so forth out of the ESC and the batteries that you're using. But like I said, I'm not going to be using this guy. I'm going to be using my own radio for the car. Finally, we're here at the point where you actually get to see the car up close. Sorry it's taken a while, but there is quite a bit of information that I needed to get through before we got here. So here is the car in all its magnificent glory, as you can see. Actually really cool color scheme. Very, very impressed with this. I really do like it. And note that they've taken a bit of a page here from the Armour boys, and they've put these little tethers on the front mounting body clips. Oh, my mind just switched off for a second there. So body clips are now attached with tethers, much like what you see in the Armour cars, which is really nice. These pop out a lot easier than the Armour cars too, hint hint, which I really like, because usually you have to use like pliers to take the body pins out of those other cars. But these are really nice, and of course this is hinged, so the whole thing just pops open just like so, and that's brilliant. They've obviously thought about the end user. They didn't make this as difficult as that old axial Exoterra that some people really love driving but hate working on, especially just changing batteries. So this actually works a little bit nicer, just being able to pop that up. Now, there are a couple of screws here. You can tighten those up a little bit so that this can hold in position a little bit better. Otherwise, it can just flop backwards like so. The cable for the LED bar that's on the front of the body here as well, that actually runs through to the back where the hinge is, and that works really well, which means that when you lift the body, you don't have a wire kind of coming here and unplugging from itself or doing anything crazy like that. So wire management, very well done here, Losi. Big thumbs up from me. You've done extremely well. So before we go and start talking about the inside, let's start from the outside. And of course, we're going to talk about the tires and the wheels. Wheels and tires, I mean, the wheels themselves actually look really nice. I love the white with the red little highlight accent. Very nice, like really nice touch. Looks good, matches the car, perfect. Tires themselves, I have to say, impressive. I like the rubber compound. I like that the foam doesn't feel super soft in there. It doesn't feel too brittle. I'm really quite liking these tires. I hope that they grip, because it would be a shame if they didn't offer me any grip in the terrain that I run on. But from what I hear and from the footage that I've seen of these cars running, they actually hook up pretty well. So I'm looking forward to trying these tires and hopefully keeping them on the car. Suspension wise, I mean, it's a Losi. They can't bugger this up. They've done this many times before, and I like it. I like the suspension. I think it's just on point. Well done. Looking forward to seeing how that actually performs in the real world. Yeah, Losi. There's not much else we can say. So, popping that open, we can have a look inside, and of course, I will give you all a bit of a close-up as we talk about this car. So we have front and rear mounted sway bars. So that's already done. I do not see droop screws, but there are provisions for them. So the A-arms do have holes in there for the droop screws, but they're not included. And it looks as though on the back, that's interesting. On the back, there is actually holes on the chassis where the droop screws should go. Which is just there. You might be able to see those tiny little holes. So that's kind of interesting. Wasn't expecting that, so we'll pop that back open. We have adjustable camber links and toe links at the front, adjustable camber links at the rear. We have CVDs at the front and CVDs in the rear by the looks of it. So captured dog bones, which is really nice. And of course, you know, they're less likely to hopefully pop out. They shouldn't pop out on us. Now, an interesting thing regarding the center drivetrain of this car is that the center diff actually goes off center laterally. So it actually goes a little bit off to the side. So the front drive shaft actually comes off on a bit of an angle, meets up to where the motor is, and then goes straight into the rear diff, which is again mounted the rear drive shaft actually goes into the rear diff off center. Chassis braces on this, of course, you've got the big kind of upper deck, and then you've got two plastic chassis braces that go straight to the aluminium chassis. The aluminium chassis, by the way, looks fantastic and feels amazing. It doesn't look like it's super thick. It looks like it's your typical maybe 2.5 mil thereabouts, maybe 3 mil, but it is cut out internally on the inside of the car to obviously lighten it up where they can. So really, really nice. Now, your steering servo up here is a Spectrum servo, and that is standing upright. Mounted to the side is that new AVC receiver, which looks kind of cool. And you know, there's no receiver box in this, which means that despite the fact that the car might be a little bit waterproof, I'd be hesitant in splashing this thing through anything more than just a little bit of wet grass, because that receiver could potentially get wet and get damaged. Now, an interesting point to also make regarding the suspension setup of this, although you have aluminium threaded body shocks all the way around, the shock towers are also aluminium, but the front shock tower is 4 millimeters and the rear shock tower is 5 millimeters thick. So interesting how they got two different thicknesses going on there. Now, your motor. The motor is, I'll have to put the size up on screen because I don't have the size here and I did forget to measure it. But the KV is a 3150. If I was to take a wild guess, it's a 3660 something. That would be my guess, but again, I'll put it up on screen for you. And that looks like it's a pretty decent motor for what this car is. And from what I've seen, like I said, this thing goes pretty well. So yeah, I'm really keen to sort of try this thing out, see what speed we can get, if you can hit 50 plus miles an hour with the 3S and of course that optional pinion. Now, what else can we mention about this car? The rear wing mount. This is actually kind of cool the way that they've done it. Pretty standard, but they've added a little bit of Lexan in here for some scale looks. And then of course you got the wing mounted up here, which is non-adjustable, by the way, in case you're wondering. Wing has got a little bit of flex to it, and that is pretty much it. Now, the hinge pin braces on both front and rear of the front and rear A-arms, by the looks of things, are all plastic, unless these are kind of covering up any bits of aluminium that I can't see. But yeah, that's probably the only thing that I kind of wish they would have gone with some aluminium in here. It looks like they may have a little bit in the, nah, it looks like it's all plastic. But this is a much lighter weight vehicle than what I'm typically used to. And it's designed to handle a little bit nicer as well. A lot of people wouldn't really put this in the great big basher category, but given the footage that I've seen and what people have told me about this car, this thing apparently can take a pretty big beating, and I'm really keen to drive it in the same terrain that I drive all my other cars and just see what it can do. And yeah, it looks cool. It's a different scale. It's a little bit different from what I'm used to. It has some new technology in here, which I'm really dying to try out and see what it's all about. I have used the Spectrum charger a little bit, so I have a little bit of experience with that charger, and it looks to be a brilliant charger. I really like the menus and everything else about it. So I'll be showing you that in a separate video, as well as the batteries that I got for this particular car. I think that pretty much covers everything that I need to talk about with this Losi Buggy. The ESC, as I said, it is 130 amp firmer ESC. This is the biggest tech advancement with these particular cars that Horizon and Losi and potentially other brands under the Losi name will be bringing out with these particular ESCs, which were really cool to see, and just how people take to them and the feedback that we get, you know, not just from you guys using them, whether you like them or not, but also the feedback that you get in the radios. I think that's something that I'm really looking forward to be able to have that telemetry feature. So we're going to close this up and finish off this video. Hopefully you enjoyed this unboxing. Hopefully you are looking forward to seeing this thing run, just as I am looking forward to running it. If you're new here, please be sure to subscribe. Don't forget to check out the video description for more information on the car, as well as links to my social media pages. I thank you all very much for watching, and I'll be speaking to you all next time.